Well, good morning. How are we doing today, everybody? Man, I'm so glad to see you. Thanks for coming. If you're visiting or you're a guest with us, I love that you're here. I hope you enjoy your time with us. I hope you meet some cool people. We are really excited for you to meet some new people. And if you're looking for a church home, we'd love to have you here. We believe in what Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, that we're going to try our very best to be all things to all people by all means so that we might save some. We know we don't do the work of saving. That's the Lord Jesus Christ that does that. But we believe in leading people to Christ and seeing life change as a result of meeting him. So hey, if you have a copy of the scriptures, would you get it out? We're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 8 today. We've been working through this Old Testament book. We've just got a few more weeks before we get to the end of it, but I hope it's been helpful for you. Here's the question that Solomon, the writer of the book, the wisest man to ever live, which don't forget that, because even as we get into Ecclesiastes 8 today, we just want to remember this guy was no slouch. He was wise. He knew what he was talking about. But what he has been answering, the question he's been talking about is this one. Is life meaningful or is life meaningless? And that goes for us too. Thousands of years after Solomon wrote these words, that question still rings in the atmosphere. Is life full of meaning or is life void or empty of meaning? And Solomon would actually, as we read through Ecclesiastes, make this his bottom line. That if you were going to summarize everything that Solomon says in this book, his bottom line is that life lived apart from God cannot be full of any real and lasting purpose. Okay, so we have to be in relationship with God, and we also have to be under the guidance and the direction of God, and then conform our lives to what he teaches in his word and what it means to be in relationship with him for us to truly find any real meaning in life. And so I hope that as we've worked through this, something has jumped out to you and you've been able to grab it and you think, yes, there is meaning and purpose in that. So here's what I want to do today. I want to do something a little different with you. We're going to read down through verse 17 of chapter 8. So would you stand with me for the reading of God's word? I want to do this together. We're not going to read out loud together, but as I'm reading, whatever version you're using, read along. If you need the screens behind me, that's fine too. So let's look at verse 1 of chapter 8. Who is like the wise, and who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. So I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, what are you doing? Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for everything, although man's trouble lies heavy on him. For he does not know what is to be, for who can tell him how it will be? No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. All this I observed while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun when man had power over man to his hurt. Verse 10 says, then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done such things. This also is vanity, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. The heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. Though a sinner does evil 100 times or prolongs his life, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God. Why? Because they fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he doesn't fear God. Verse 14 says, there is a vanity, that's again, the word is emptiness, that takes place on earth. For there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked, and there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deed of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity, and I commend joy for a man who has no good thing under the sun but to eat, drink, and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. Therefore, or then, when I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that's done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes sleep, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that's done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. You may have a seat. Thank you. So after reading that, I would imagine many of us have no idea what Solomon just said. I would be with you in that. It's a very, very challenging section of the book. What I want to do today is try to personify wisdom a little bit with you. I think that's what you see throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. Is in the first 6 chapters of the book, Solomon deconstructs most things that we would point to bring meaning in our life. Things like money, sex, power, possessions, even animals. I don't know if you remember that, but earlier on in the book, he even deconstructs the value that animals and things like that bring to life as fruitless and as emptiness in achieving true meaning this side of the sun, or under the sun, which is one of his phrases. So chapters 1 through 6, he deconstructs the things that we would point to. And in chapters 7 through 12, he constructs the one thing that we ought to be clinging to bring meaning and purpose, and that is wisdom. So in a relationship with God, under the revelation of God, am I seeking wisdom? And there's almost a sense in which wisdom is a person. Of course, wisdom is not a person. But as you read through Ecclesiastes, and even as you get into the book of Proverbs, which is before Ecclesiastes, wisdom almost seems to be this person that you're invited to walk with. Like you're invited to kind of grab their hands and walk through life with wisdom. And as much as we're invited into relationship with wisdom, there is also the sad choice or decision to not walk in wisdom. You and I both know people who know a lot of stuff, but they're not wise people. Maybe you know somebody who isn't necessarily the sharpest tool in the shed, but man, they are wise. So wisdom is what Solomon is inviting us into here in chapter 8, and he's going to look at it through 3 different perspectives. The first is caution, that living under the sun, this side of heaven, within a governmental system, within an authority structure at work or just out in our society, out in our culture, one of the ways that wisdom is personified in us is through this word caution. So we'll look at that, and that kind of takes us down through verse 10, I believe. And then after caution, we're going to look at this phrase or this idea of patience, that also understanding wisdom in a day-to-day walk through life. There's a lot of patience involved in living wisely. And then the last thing we're going to look at as we wrap this up today is the word joy. That Solomon just doesn't say, be cautious, live patiently, and then leave us on our own. He actually says, here's what this looks like very practically for you. We ought to live as people full of joy. How many of you have been to Mount Rushmore? Can I see your hands? Yeah, quite a few of you across the room. I've not been there yet. It's on my bucket list. But if you've been there, you know that you can take in all of Mount Rushmore. You can see all 4 of the presidents' faces, Washington, Lincoln, Roosevelt, and Jefferson, all on the side of the mountain. And it's beautiful. It's crazy cool, the amount of work and artistry that went into creating that. But you can also focus in on one of the faces, and just maybe if you're a history buff or know a little bit about history, something will come to mind about each one of the particular presidents that are represented on Mount Rushmore. That's the idea here with wisdom. We can look at wisdom as this incredible, beautiful mosaic of God's sovereign leading in our lives, but today we can actually focus a little bit on pieces of them, such as caution, patience, and joy. All right, so let's go to, does that sound like a plan, by the way, to you? You want to tackle it that way? All right, let's look at verse 1. There's a lot to unpack as we get into the first thing, but look at verse 1. Solomon says, who is like the wise? Okay, now I want you to get this idea that like the wise is so, the people who are wise, they make such an impression. It's like Solomon's just like, man, who is like those people? You know, like it's almost a rhetorical question. It's nobody. Like the wise people make such an impression. Who is like the wise? And who knows the interpretation of a thing? And I love this next phrase, this sentence. A man's wisdom makes a couple things here. Man's wisdom makes his face shine. Okay, so that's the first thing that wisdom does. But then also it makes the hardness of his face changed. Okay? What I want you to see here is it's not so much what wisdom does for you. Oh, there's a lot that wisdom does for you when you embrace wisdom and you live wisely. But what's happening here is it's what wisdom is actually doing to you. Do you see the difference? Like wisdom, when we adopt wisdom, when you and I say, I'm going to live by wisdom, it makes my face shine. So what's the inverse? That your face is dark, that your face is wrapped by anxiety. Your face probably has, not just age wrinkles, but, real anxiety wrinkles. My face is dark, my face is shadowed. Solomon says right away, I want you to know something. Wisdom changes the countenance of your face. Your face shines. But then he also says that your face goes from being very hard to being very soft. What does that mean? It's the same thing. It's like you and I, when we don't submit and invite wisdom and live by wisdom, and we feel like we're going to kind of figure all this out on our own and we're going to be in control, it's like a heavy weight on our shoulders. We'll see that language in just a few verses. And so the wisest man to ever live says, embrace wisdom, because not only will it do something for you, it will actually do something to you. Now, look at verse 2. Here's where we get into caution. So here's what he says, with wisdom in mind, how do we live that way? He says, I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Right away, whenever we read this, I want to make a couple statements. Solomon is not offering any kind of political statement here. He is not offering any kind of political theory. In fact, he's not even answering the question of when we are asked or commanded to do something within our authority structure. Again, it could be the government at a national level. It even could be the government at a state level. At work, it could be the authority of the offices that are above you. Wisdom, how do we live by wisdom in all of those structures? So he's not even talking about if what you're asked to do is right or wrong. Oftentimes that's an answer, that's a question rather, that we think of when we think of things like obeying the government and ethically speaking, when is it okay to disobey our government? And there are a lot of good conversations around civil disobedience, but let's not jump to the exception to the principle too soon. Okay, Solomon is saying, no, we're gonna keep the king's command. We're gonna obey within the authority structure. Why? Because of God's oath to him. What he's making, the point he's making is to recognize where you are and to walk into that with caution. Let me show you. Look at verse 3. Be not hasty to go from his presence. Okay, there are two ways to understand this phrase. One could be, don't leave before you pay proper respect to the authority that you're living under. And another way to understand it would be, don't leave before you know what that king or that person has asked you to do. But look at this, and if you're curious if he was asking us to just do evil things, he actually says, don't take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. In other words, the king, the authority, they're not always guided along by what is moral and by what is right. So do not take your stand in an evil cause, but also don't be hasty to go from his presence. Don't rebel against earthly authorities as God has set up, is really what he's saying. And that's a shadow of Romans 13 when Paul says that all governments are established by God. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking the same thing. Wow, there are a lot of worldly governments that, are highlighting other things. They don't look at all like God. How are we to interact? How are we to understand Paul's Romans 13 section with that? And again, those are great conversations to have. That's not the point of Solomon writing here. He's saying, may our default be that we recognize and respect and honor authority. And then look at verse 4. He says, for the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, what are you doing? No one can speak back to the king, is what he's saying. And you need to bear that in mind. Wisdom, okay? Wisdom is what makes you aware of that. Wisdom, nobody can say back to authority, what are you doing? Especially if you're not being invited into something evil. What can you say? Charles Spurgeon helps us. He was a great Baptist preacher from the 1800s. Listen to what he says. He says, this also makes us reflect on our obedience to God. as the great king. Spurgeon says, if he is a king, then it is a solemn hazard to our souls if we come short of the least of his commandments. So not the highest commandments, Spurgeon says, but even the littlest ones, the least of them. He says, remember that one treason makes a traitor, one leak sinks a ship, and one fly spoils the whole box of ointment. He that bought us with his blood deserves to be obeyed in all things with our heart, our mind, and soul, and our strength. So it makes us aware of that. Verse 5 says, and whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing. He's not asking you to do something evil. So when you are encouraged to simply obey or simply to submit to authority, wisdom says do it, but do it cautiously. And the wise heart will know, and here again, you get this idea of a bit of caution. The wise heart, that's what we want to be. And what are we going to know? What are we going to be respective of? The proper time and the just way. I mean, how many of you, without a show of hands, but how many of you right now are like, man, Andy, I'm trying to make a decision. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it, and I don't know what to think. Maybe you've even gone to the Lord and said, give me wisdom, and so far it seems like nobody's picking up on the other end. Solomon, the wisest person to have ever lived, is saying, look, a wise heart, you will know the proper time, and you will know the just way. Wisdom is what will teach you when to speak. Wisdom is what will teach you even how to speak and what to say. And I love how he brings this to a close in verse 6. He says, there is a time and there is a way for everything. Even though or although man's trouble can lie heavy on him. Maybe you feel that way, church. Maybe some of you in here today, you're just feeling like there's just something weighing heavily on my shoulders. That goes back to verse 1. That maybe our faces are darkened and our countenance is sharp because of anxiety and because of a heavy weight of decision. Solomon's saying to you and me today, hey, embrace wisdom. Invite wisdom because your trouble lies heavy on you. But there is a time and there is a way for everything. May we invite wisdom in. Wisdom, again, teaches us what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. Wisdom is lifting our eyes from the things we cannot control. Wisdom is fixing our eyes on the one who can. Okay? Let's keep going. Verse 7. For he does not know what is to be, for who can really tell him how it is to be? I mean, part of the difficulty in making big, heavy decisions is that, of course, we don't know how things are going to turn out. Well, can I get an amen from somebody today? Are you with me? Like, yes. Man, like, yeah, we don't know how things are going to turn out. I wish we did. I wish we had the little blue genie from Aladdin, right? I mean, we don't know the consequences of our decisions. And again, he says, you're right. No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. So even in your greatest moment of decision making, you still may get it wrong. There's no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given over to it. Once again, he doesn't say that we should go into wickedness. He doesn't say that. If that's the command of the king or the command of authority, what he's talking about is those who decide that I'm going to just take things into my own hands. I'm going to do things the way I want to do them. I'm going to have no respect or no regard for the structures set up. Solomon says the wickedness is not going to deliver those who are given to it. Okay, he's going to have more to say about that in a moment. And in verse 9, all of this I observed, why, and this is an incredibly important word, while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun. Okay, it is one thing to have a head full of really great knowledge about God and about following Jesus and about living a life that reflects glory upon him. It is an entirely other thing to actually apply that knowledge into wisdom and for you and I to look different. He says, I applied to my heart all that is done under the sun when man had power over man to his, okay, it's an important word, to his hurt. You see, we're living this side of heaven where there's still a lot of clawing and biting and backstabbing to advance in whatever culture or system. Maybe it's your workplace, maybe it's your neighborhood, maybe it's like a street hockey game. I don't know, but there's always that biting and clawing to get, and that's what he's getting at. He's like, look, I have to apply to my heart while living under the sun in a place where man hurts other people or people hurt other people. And again, I hope you're like, man, that just the black and white practicality of what he just said is so true. And so what do we have to employ? And I say it again, we have to employ caution when living in a world like that. We embrace wisdom, we see our role, we honor and respect authority, and we employ or live by caution. And so, I don't know about you, does anybody struggle with control? Yeah, I do. And when I was writing this earlier this week, I wrote, it's probably rooted in pride. My longing to control is probably rooted in pride. It might even be rooted in fear. I think the way I see things is the best way. And Solomon is saying to me today, and I hope he's saying to you, in that I hope you're hearing this, it's like, look, Andy, you can't control everything. Especially when someone or something like government has more power than you. He's saying wisdom is to obey with caution. It's not to fight, it's not to scramble for control. Solomon is saying that wisdom and an incessant fight for control don't always walk the same path. So we must use caution. So what's the second thing, though? I mean, yes, I'm with you, Andy, on that. Look at verse 10. Then, okay, so he's moving on in the argument, moving on in what he's saying. Look what he says. Then I saw the wicked buried. So he's at a funeral. Then I saw the wicked buried. And look how he describes them. They being the wicked, they used to go in and out of the holy place, and they were praised in the city where they had done such things. So what things is he referring to? He's actually referring up to their wickedness here. So what's happening is, imagine with me, maybe you've been at a funeral like this where the person who has died was anything but a moral person and an upright person. They weren't a Jesus-following, God-loving person. And yet at the funeral, it's like all the family and the friends so want to believe that person is in heaven. And if you're the preacher or the pastor, which I don't know how many of you are that, but they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, we believe that he's in heaven. We believe that she's in heaven. And we want you to share that eulogy. And frankly, and I don't mean to be rude, but I don't. I just talk about God being the just judge, and God will always do what is right. But I don't preach somebody post-mortem into heaven. And I love that Solomon feels the same frustration. He's like, look, I go to these funerals. I see them with my own eyes where people who lived wicked lives are praised as if they were like walking examples of a God-fearing person. And what does he call it, church? This also is, say that word with me, what? Vanity. It's empty. It's meaningless. And so we're talking about patience, and this is the context, that when it seems like people who don't follow God are getting ahead. Do you ever feel that way? It's like, man, I'm following the Lord over here. Like, I'm not doing things that maybe I would love to do outside of the family of God, and I'm doing things that Jesus has called me into and expects of me as a Christ-following man or woman. But I can't help but shake the feeling that all these other people over here who aren't signed on to this different set of ethics and this different set of lifestyle principles, their life looks a lot more fun than mine does. Or they're fudging the bottom line and they're making more money than me. Or they're taking better trips than me because they're not tithing to their local church and giving to 501c3s above that are helping to move the gospel throughout the community. I look at them, I'm like, what's the deal? And if I'm being completely honest with you, there are times that Becky and I, a few times a year, will sit down and we'll be like, man, look at this. I mean, look at this family. Look at this family. They're not living for the Lord, but look at all what seem to be blessings that are in their lives. Do you ever feel that way, church, or am I the only one? Yes. So look what he says. Okay, this is so crazy. He just said, I go to funerals of wicked people who get praised. And look at this, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. What's another way to understand that? Is delayed. Can you see the white? Because the sentence against an evil deed is delayed. Here it is, okay? The heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. Solomon, the wisest man ever lived, says, because wickedness seems to be praised, because those who don't live by the standards of God's word and the standards of being in relationship with him, because those people tend to get ahead and they're not punished for their sinful behaviors, the rest of us sometimes, according to Solomon, are like, man, I think I want to do the same thing. It's like my heart is, in his language, I'm fully set to do evil because it seems like evil prospers. Patience, because look what happens, okay? We got to understand this, patience. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, in other words, though it seems that evil is blessed, that evil prospers, okay, here's our, man, don't miss this. Yet I know. It's not see. It's not see, okay? Maybe I should put not there. It's, I know that it will be well with those who fear God. Why? Because they fear before him. Here's what he's saying. It doesn't matter what you see, it matters what you know. And what do we know? That evil does not prosper. That evil does not bring blessings. Evil may seem to, it may see to us, like we may see, oh, evil's prospering, evil's winning, the wicked are winning. But what do we know? We know actually that Jesus wins. We know actually that Jesus will come back at some point in the future. We don't know when. In Revelation 19, it talks about him coming back on a white horse, dressed in white, with King of Kings and Lord of Lords somehow stenciled on his robe and on his thighs. And he comes back victoriously claiming the victory that he won at the cross. So if you're a Jesus follower, you win. I thought I'd get more than 2 or 3. If you're a Jesus follower, you win. You win. Come on. Can I just tell you a quick story? So yesterday I heard from my oldest daughter, Elle, who's out of college. She has her car out there that, I don't know, a month or 2 ago, she was backing out of a parking spot, and as she kind of swung the front end of her car around, it got a little too close to the car next to hers, and she rubbed up against the back bumper of the car next to hers and left some of her paint on that car. You know what I mean? Like, she hit another car. Okay? She hit the other car, and she called home, and she talked to Becky, which, if you know me, that was very smart of her to do. But I handled it very well. But she talked to Becky. It's not about me, it's about her. She talked to Becky, and Becky said, really, babe, what you should do is you should write your name and your phone number and put it under the windshield wiper of the car that you tagged. And Elle did that, and she went on her way, and she got a call from this kid, this college student. He was the owner of the car, and he wanted her insurance information, which is my insurance information. So Elle said, why don't we just try to do this outside of insurance? He was okay with it. He went and got a few estimates on repairs, about $400. So Elle took $400 out of her savings account and paid him for the work being done to her car. So proud of her for that. I mean, it was like, when I heard about that, it was a really proud dad moment, where I was like, man, she adulted, she handled it. I'm so proud of you. Yesterday, somebody next to her backs out, cuts it too short, and hits the back of her car. Did not leave a note. And she asked me yesterday, Dad, I feel like I did the right thing and they did the wrong thing, and I'm the one that's missing out. And I said, babe, can I share that story? Because I'm talking about that tomorrow. And this is a shared common experience for all of us. And I think it's okay to just say, I feel that way. Okay, there was a guy who wrote songs in King David's palace. His name was Asaph. And I want you to see this. Look at Psalm 73, starting in verse 16. Asaph, this songwriter, says, so I tried to understand why the wicked prosper. What I love is this is not just an Ecclesiastes theme. This goes even into Psalms, especially Psalm 73. But then he says, he admits it. I think all of us need to do it. It is a difficult task. It is tough. He even says it. Psalm 73, verse 16. I try to understand why the wicked prosper, but I can't. It's a difficult task, okay? Then, so that's already happened. The confusion is there. Then he says, okay, I went into your sanctuary. What is that? That is worship. Okay, so I try to understand why the wicked prosper. I can't. My response is to worship. Is that your response? Like, why do the wicked prosper? Why does it seem when I'm doing everything right, I'm actually falling behind and they're getting ahead? Is our response to that a humble surrender in worship? I went into your sanctuary, O God, and that's where I finally understood the destiny of the wicked. Truly, and here it is, verse 18, you put them on a slippery path and you send them sliding over the cliff to destruction. In an instant, what does he say now? They are destroyed, completely swept away by terrors. You're like, well, man, God is mean. No, God has made a way. His name is Jesus. If you reject Jesus, this is you. Swept away by terrors. When you arise, O Lord, I actually really love the imagery here. You will laugh at their silly ideas as a person laughs at dreams in the morning. Do you ever laugh at your dreams? You wake up, you're like, well, I had a wild one last night. I got to tell you about it. This is so crazy. You know, like we had a camper and it was floating through outer space. I don't know. You just laugh at dreams in the morning. And Asaph, a songwriter in David's court, says, I struggle to know why the wicked prosper. Solomon is telling us, here's what you do. You have patience. You have patience because, you know, I actually skipped something. I don't want to. Look at this. But it will not be well with the wicked. This is verse 13. It will not be well with the wicked. Okay, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow because he does not fear before God. It's not going to go well for the wicked. That's the promise. So we need to have patience. Okay, and then lastly, we're going to pick it up here in verse 16, we ought to have joy. I'm going to read 3 words, and then I want you to join me on the 4th word. Okay, so did you get that? I'm going to read 3, and then I want you to join me on the 4th one. Let me find out where we are. Here it is. Here are 3 words. I'm going to read these 3, and I want you to join me on this one, okay? And I commend what? Joy. I commend joy. In other words, this isn't just a suggestion. This is something Solomon says that I've got in my life. It's been massively helpful. It's a part of wisdom, caution, patience, joy. And so I'm commending joy to you. The wisest man to have ever lived saying, here's how you ought to respond. When you feel like you're under an authority that is more powerful than you, of course, is still limited by the reality of death, as we saw earlier. But nonetheless, you're under an authority. Sometimes you feel out of control, so you're cautious. But then you also feel the wicked is prospering. The wicked are prospering. What do? We're going to be patient because we know there's a day coming when the scales will be balanced. And in 3, he doesn't leave us like, well, what do I do now? What do we do now, church? We're going to be joyful. For man has nothing better under the sun but to eat, drink, and there it is, be joyful. That is the best thing we can do. For this will go with him through his toil, through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. And here's our word again, when I applied my heart. Okay, that is I paused And I applied what I knew to be true. When I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes see sleep, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. What's his suggestion? What is his command? He's saying we need to seek joy. So look, I don't know where you are today. I don't know what you're struggling with. I don't know who in your life is not following Jesus and seems to be getting ahead. I don't know what people have asked you to do. You're like, I don't know if I can do that. There's nothing necessarily morally evil about it, but it really stinks to be in this place of obedience or this place of submission. I hope that today you'll adopt wisdom. You'll say, Lord, I need wisdom. James Cone writes this, and I want to close. He says, thus, since God has made the is, okay, the is, the ought, and the what will be. Okay, God has made all of that, the is, the ought, and the what will be. All that man can know of them is through that which God has revealed. True understanding and the resultant well-being then comes only from beyond the sun. And that perspective comes only from God. That's what he's saying. I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. So how do we respond to this? I mean, for us here in November of 2024, a small snippet of wisdom literature written by a king 3,000 years ago, the wisest man to have ever lived. What does it mean for you and me? I mean, how do we apply this? I read an article this week that said life sucks, now get over it. And while I'm not sure that's the greatest way to understand this passage of scripture, it's a bit crass. I think we could say life sucks, but it's okay, it's not about you. And look, I don't mean to step too heavily on your toes, but I do want to step on your toes a little bit, that life is not about me, it's not about you. Life is about the glory of God and how our lives can become shining, incredible, highlighting displays of God's glory. Even in how we respond in and under authority, how we respond when it seems like the wicked people around us are prospering, and even how we respond to his invitation for joy. So my question for you today is this, and I want to wrap up with this idea. Where are you finding your joy? Is it in people? I mean, that's great if those people share the same values you do. That's great if you're on the same path, moving towards the same thing. But I know many of your stories, that's not always true. There's an upset or something happens in a relationship and you find yourself just decimated by someone else because your joy was too much found in them. And so I encourage you, can you find your joy in this God who is beyond the sun, and this God who has breathed the breath of life into you? Find joy in the one who is to come. Like we've been singing this song all year, He Who Is to Come. And it's all about the reality that Jesus Christ is coming back. And it's not myth, it's not folklore, it's not unicorn stuff. He's coming back. We may be alive for it, we may not be, it may be the next year. We don't know when he's coming back, but the fact is he's coming back. He said, I'm coming back. I'm gonna go away to build a place for you, and I'm gonna come back to you so that I can take you with me. But we've been singing this song, He Who Is to Come. And I just want to encourage you and challenge you. Your joy can be found in the one who is to come, the one who will leave heaven for earth, come back and take you back with himself. And what I love about this song, and I want to read some of the lyrics to you, there's a section in it. Man, when we get to it, I don't know, sing loud. Now it's a little soft, like the music isn't all that big at this section. That's okay. Sing loud. Listen to the words. He is surely coming. Can you feel it too? And ever since I heard this line, the first time I heard this song, these next two lines blew my mind. It's so true. All of this tension is growing stronger, but it's just a sign that he's getting closer. He's already on the move. So church, I just want to, what do you know? Jesus is coming back. So yes, life may be so tough. And it may feel like you're just in a hamster wheel going round and round, making no progress, no progress. But he's coming back. And if everything in this world leaves you unsatisfied or dissatisfied when trying to find joy in those things, what would it look like for you to turn your gaze to heaven and just say, God, I'm gonna fear you. And that doesn't mean I'm like looking at you like a kid terrified by a weird clown, but like I'm looking at you believing that my breath is from you. The very breath I have is from you. And I'm living in this incredible awe, and this incredible, I'm inspired by you to live a life that honors Jesus. But life's not about you. So maybe some of us today say, I want to find joy simply because my joy will speak to you. You are coming soon. Let me pray. Father, thank you for your word. Again, the book of Ecclesiastes, which just has a dark feel to it. Man, it challenges us to realize today, life is not about us. Life is a gift from you. It's not about politics. It's not about government. It's not about all these things that seem to take our attention away. It is about you. It's about living a life that reflects and honors Christ. And so today, I don't know where we are. I don't care where we are, what we're dealing with, what we're wrestling through. Not to minimize any of that, but to maximize finding joy in you. Just like the songwriter said, I struggle to find why wickedness prospers until I worship, until I find joy in you, until I'm able to look up from all the things that seek to take my attention, all the striving after control, all the bouncing back and forth between being in control and then out of control and in control and out of control. Lord, that is a weight on my shoulders. My face is darkened and my features are sharp because of those things. May wisdom come in, lift that burden, soften my appearance, as verse 1 says, as I look toward heaven and to the one who is coming. He is coming, he is coming, he is coming. Jesus, you are coming. May that matter. I don't want to live my life wasting time, flitting about in things that don't matter. But I want to, and I pray all of us want to live life in light of the reality that Jesus is coming back. And he has made a way for you and I to be saved, church. And if you have never given your life to Jesus, do it today. Because he will include you when he comes back. Your name will be written in what's called the Lamb's Book of Life, because you have admitted you're a sinner. You've given yourself, your faith, your future to Jesus. You've asked him to save you from your sins. You trust the cross. You trust the empty tomb, and the rest of your life is his. If you've never done that, I pray you do it today.